Ama Njeri stood in the corner of her small room in Mombasa, her fingers tight around a clear glass jar that used to be heavy with coins and folded notes. Now it was light, almost weightless, except for the echo of her own heartbeat. For 2 years she had been feeding this jar. Every shilling from selling her handmade jewelry at the market, every tip from helping out at the neighbor's shop. It wasn't just money to her, it was bricks for the dream she had been building in her mind. A tiny boutique filled with colorful African fabrics, beads, and designs that carried her name. She remembered the way she used to shake the jar gently, hearing the coins jingle, imagining the day she would finally unlock the shop door for the first time. She'd even picked the perfect spot near the beach, where tourists and locals mingled. The future felt so close she could taste it. But that morning, when she reached for the jar, it was empty. At first, she thought she was losing her mind. Maybe she had hidden the money somewhere else. But her cousin's hesitant words cut through her confusion like a knife. Her mother had taken it. All of it. For a luxury getaway to Zanzibar with her friends. Ama's knees felt weak. Her own mother. The person she trusted most. She stared at the empty jar, her voice trembling as she whispered to herself. She didn't just take my money, she took my dream. Ama had always loved her mother, Wanjiku, but loving her wasn't always easy. Wanjiku was the kind of woman who could light up a room, who spoke with confidence, and carried herself like she was meant for a bigger life. People admired her charm, her style, the way she always seemed to know the right thing to say. But behind closed doors, Ama knew a different side. Her mother's world often revolved around herself, her image, her needs, her desire to be seen as successful and admired. Ama grew up in a small 2-room home in Mombasa, where the sound of the ocean mixed with the noise of the busy streets. They didn't have much, but Ama learned early that if you wanted something, you had to work for it. As a teenager, she started making jewelry, bright beaded necklaces, bracelets with tiny shells, earrings shaped like flowers. She would sit by the market stalls, sometimes under the hot sun, sometimes in the salty evening breeze, selling her pieces to passers-by. It wasn't glamorous, but Ama loved it. Every time someone wore her work, it felt like a piece of her dream was walking out into the world. Wanjiku never really discouraged her, but she didn't seem to take Ama's dreams seriously either. Her attention was always on her social circle, the ladies she met for brunch, the new dress she wanted to post about, the trip she wanted to brag about. She cared deeply about how people saw her, even if it meant stretching the truth or spending money they didn't have. Still, Ama kept saving. Every coin from her jewelry sales went into her jar. She skipped outings, ignored temptations, and told herself that the sacrifice would be worth it. 2 years passed, and the jar grew heavier. She started making plans, looking at small rental spaces, imagining the boutique's name painted in bold colors. For Ama, this wasn't just about selling clothes and jewelry. It was about independence, proving to herself and to the world that she could build something from nothing. She wanted her mother to be proud, to stand in her shop one day and say, "That's my daughter. She did this." But deep down, she also knew Wanjiku's weaknesses. She had seen her mother borrow money she never repaid, cancel bills to buy something fancy, or make promises she didn't keep. Ama just never imagined that one day, her own dream would be the price her mother was willing to pay for another chance to show off. That afternoon, Ama came home from the market with her hands aching from stringing beads all day. She was tired, but her heart was light. She had made a good number of sales. She thought about adding the day's earnings to her jar, that familiar clink of coins she loved so much. But when she walked into her small room, the spot on her shelf where the jar always sat was empty. At first, she just froze. Maybe she had moved it? Maybe her aunt had borrowed it for safekeeping? Ama started searching frantically, under the bed, in her cupboard, behind the clothes hanging by the wall. But the jar was gone. Her stomach turned cold. Her cousin, Kamau, was sitting in the living room when she rushed out. He avoided her eyes, fidgeting with his phone. "Kamau, did you see my jar?" she asked, her voice sharper than she intended. He hesitated, then sighed. "Ama, I think you should ask your mum." Something in the way he said it made her heart drop. "What do you mean?" she pressed. Kamau bit his lip. "I overheard her on the phone this morning. She said she finally booked her Zanzibar trip with the social club ladies. She mentioned she had the cash now." It felt like the walls closed in on Ama. She walked straight to her mother's room, her steps heavy and uneven. Wanjiku was sitting at her vanity, trying on a pair of sunglasses. "Mum, where is my savings jar?" Ama's voice shook, but she tried to keep it steady. Wanjiku didn't even look guilty. She glanced at Ama in the mirror and said casually, "I used it. I'm going to Zanzibar next week." Ama stared at her. "You used my money?" "The money I've been saving for 2 years." Her mother waved a hand as if swatting away a fly. "Oh, don't be so dramatic. You're young. You'll make it back. Besides, it's just money." Ama felt her throat tighten, her eyes burning. "It's not just money. It was my dream. My shop. But Wanjiku had already turned back to the mirror, adjusting her sunglasses like nothing had happened. Dreams can wait, Ama. Opportunities like this trip can't. Ama walked out before she could say something she'd regret. Her body felt numb, but her mind was racing. She had never felt so betrayed, so small in her own home. The woman she had hoped would one day stand proudly in her boutique had stolen the very thing that could have built it. That night, Ama sat in her empty room, the space on the shelf glaring back at her like an open wound. She cried quietly at first, then harder, until there were no more tears left. Somewhere deep inside, past the heartbreak, a stubborn spark began to burn. If her mother thought this would stop her, she was wrong. Ama would start again. And this time, she would make it impossible for anyone to take her dream away. Ama didn't ask for the money back. She didn't yell again. She didn't even bring it up. She knew her mother would never see the problem the way she did. If she begged, it would only make her feel smaller. So she kept quiet, but inside she made a promise to herself. She would rebuild, and she would do it without touching a cent from her mother ever again. The next morning, she started looking for more work. Within a week, she landed a night job at a hotel, cleaning rooms and changing sheets while most of the city slept. She would clock out just before sunrise, walk home, grab a quick shower, and then head straight to the market with her jewelry stall. Her hands were often sore from scrubbing floors all night and threading beads all day, but she pushed through. Sleep became a luxury she couldn't afford, but the thought of her dream kept her going. One evening, while scrolling through her old sketches, an idea began to form. Maybe she didn't need a physical shop right away. Rent was expensive, and she couldn't risk losing another jar of savings. But online? That was different. She could reach people beyond Mombasa, tourists, fashion lovers, anyone who appreciated African beadwork. She borrowed her cousin Kamau's phone, which had a better camera, and started taking photos of her design. She styled them on herself, on friends, even on a neighbor's little girl who loved to pose. She posted them on Instagram, tagging every local fashion account she could find. At first, only a few people noticed. Then one day, a popular Mombasa-based lifestyle blogger shared one of Ama's necklaces in her favorite finds post. Overnight, Ama's inbox filled with messages. People wanted to order, to know if she shipped, to see more designs. Soon, local influencers started wearing her pieces to events, taking photos, and tagging her page. Orders came from people she had never met, some from Nairobi, some from across the border in Tanzania. Ama started staying up late, not just to clean hotel rooms, but to pack jewelry orders and write thank you notes to her customers. She was exhausted, but the exhaustion felt different this time. It wasn't the hopeless kind. It was the kind that told her she was moving forward, step by step. Each sale felt like adding a coin back into the invisible jar she now carried in her heart. Ama didn't tell her mother about the online store. This was hers alone, untouchable. She didn't need approval, applause, or permission. She just needed to keep going. And for the first time since the betrayal, she felt that her dream wasn't lost. It was simply finding a new way to grow. One afternoon, as Ama was packing up her stall at the market, she got a message on Instagram from a woman she didn't know. At first, she thought it was just another order, but when she opened it, her hands started shaking. The message was from an organizer of a big fashion expo in Nairobi. They had seen her work online and wanted her to showcase her jewelry at the event, one of the biggest in the country. Ama read the message 3 times to make sure it was real. She had never even been to Nairobi before, let alone been part of such a high-profile event. Her first thought was, I can't afford this. But then she remembered why she had been working so hard. This was the kind of chance people waited years for. She messaged back with a simple, yes, I'll be there. The weeks leading up to the expo were a blur. Every free moment was spent designing new pieces. Necklaces layered with shells and beads, bracelets in bold colors, earrings that seemed to dance with every step. She experimented with patterns inspired by her coastal heritage, making sure each piece told a story. When she finally arrived in Nairobi, the expo hall was overwhelming. Bright lights, big banners, and rows of designers from all over Africa. Ama's booth was small, but it was hers, and she decorated it with fabrics from Mombasa and displays that made her beadwork shine. On the second day, as she was arranging necklaces on a stand, a tall woman in a flowing dress stopped at her table. Ama recognized her instantly, one of the most famous fashion bloggers in Africa, someone with millions of followers. The blogger picked up a necklace, ran her fingers over the beads, and smiled. These are beautiful. Where did you learn to make them? Ama's voice was steady, though her heart was racing. I started making them when I was young. Every piece is handmade, inspired by the coast. The blogger bought 3 pieces on the spot and asked to take a photo with Ama. Later that evening, she posted the photo with the caption, one of the most talented young designers I've met. Remember her name, Ama Njeri. Ama woke up the next morning to hundreds of notifications. Her Instagram following had doubled overnight. By the end of the week, it had tripled. Orders poured in from all over: Kenya, South Africa, the UK, even the US. People wanted custom pieces, bulk orders, collaborations. She barely slept that month, working late into the night to keep up. But every time she packed an order, she thought about that empty jar and smiled to herself. This was more than just a break. It was proof that her dream was not only alive, it was unstoppable. Ama's business was busier than she had ever imagined. She had orders coming in faster than she could make the pieces, and her little online shop had turned into something people all over the country were talking about. One evening, while she was packing a set of custom bracelets for a client in South Africa, her phone buzzed with an unknown number. "Hello, is this Ama Njeri?" a warm voice asked. It was a reporter from a local news channel. They were doing a special feature on young African entrepreneurs who had built their businesses from the ground up, and Ama's name had come up several times. "We'd love to profile you," the reporter said. Ama agreed, though part of her felt nervous. She wasn't used to being in front of cameras, but she wanted to share her story honestly. A week later, a small crew came to her workspace. They filmed her stringing beads, showed her packaging orders, and even took some shots of her at the market where she had started. During the interview, the reporter asked about her challenges. Ama hesitated but decided to tell the truth. Well, most of it. She talked about how she had saved for years to open a boutique, only for someone close to her to take all her savings. She didn't give names, but she described the betrayal and how it pushed her to rebuild her dream in a new way. When the segment aired a few days later, it was powerful. They showed her smiling as she worked, intercut with her voiceover about starting from nothing and turning pain into motivation. The story touched a lot of people. Messages poured in from strangers saying they were inspired, that her journey gave them hope. But in a different corner of the city, the reaction was very different. Wanjika's social club ladies watched the piece together during one of their meetups. It didn't take long for them to connect the dots: Ama, the stolen savings, the timing of Wanjika's Zanzibar trip. They didn't need names. The story fit too perfectly. The whispers started immediately. Some laughed, some shook their heads, and soon the gossip spread beyond the group. At the next brunch, Wanjika noticed the looks, the fake smiles, the way conversations stopped when she walked in. A few friends didn't even bother hiding their smirks. By the end of the week, her phone had gone silent. No more invitations, no more group photos. The very people she had worked so hard to impress now saw her as the selfish mother who had stolen her daughter's dream. Meanwhile, Ama kept working, unaware at first of the full extent of her mother's embarrassment. But when she heard whispers from mutual acquaintances, she understood. The truth had a way of finding its way out, sometimes without you having to say the name at all. Wanjika came back from Zanzibar with pictures, souvenirs, and a tan, but none of it mattered. Her social club no longer invited her anywhere. Calls went unanswered, group chats went quiet. The people she used to impress had moved on, and the ones who still talked to her did it with thinly veiled judgment in their voices. The gossip about what she had done to her own daughter had spread far and stuck deep. She stayed away from Ama for weeks, partly out of pride, partly because she didn't know what to say. But when she heard through the neighborhood that Ama was opening her first physical shop in town, something inside her shifted. Maybe it was loneliness. Maybe it was guilt. Or maybe it was the simple fact that Ama's success was now impossible to ignore. On the morning of the opening, Ama was busy arranging the last of her displays, rows of beaded necklaces shining under the soft lights, earrings hanging like tiny ornaments, colorful fabrics folded neatly in a... The air smelled of fresh paint and flowers from friends who had sent congratulations. The door opened, and Ama looked up to see her mother standing there. Wanjika was dressed neatly, but her eyes looked tired. She stepped inside slowly, as if unsure whether she was welcome. "Ama," she began, her voice softer than Ama had heard in years. "I'm sorry." Ama didn't reply. She kept adjusting the display, pretending to be busy. Wanjika moved closer. "I know I hurt you. I know I was wrong. I've lost a lot. My friends, my reputation. And I don't want to lose you too." Ama finally looked at her, her face calm but guarded. "You took everything I worked for. Do you really think sorry fixes that?" Wanjika's eyes filled with tears. "I want to make it right. Let me work here. I can help with customers, with cleaning, anything you need. I just want to be part of what you've built." The words hung in the air, heavy and strange. Ama felt her chest tighten. Part of her wanted to tell her mother to leave and never come back. Part of her wanted to believe that maybe this was the start of something different, something better between them. She thought of all the nights she had worked until her hands ached, the mornings she had gone to the market half asleep from her hotel shift, the messages from strangers who cheered her on when her own mother hadn't. And now here was Wanjiku, asking for a place in the very dream she had tried to destroy. Ama didn't answer right away. She just stood there, staring at her mother, feeling the tug-of-war between anger and pity. The shop was opening in less than an hour, and she knew she would have to make a decision soon, one that would change everything between them. The shop's grand opening was brighter and louder than Ama had imagined. Friends, customers, and curious locals filled the small space, their voices mixing with the soft music playing in the background. Cameras from a local blogger clicked away, capturing the shelves lined with Ama's colorful beadwork, the racks of bold fabrics, the handcrafted jewelry that had taken her years to perfect. Wanjika was there too. She had shown up early, dressed in a floral dress and heels, moving from group to group as if she belonged at the center of the celebration. She smiled widely, told people how proud she was of her hardworking daughter, and acted as though she had been supporting Ama from the very beginning. Ama saw it all from behind the counter. She didn't confront her mother. Not here, not now. But a quiet determination began to settle in her chest. She knew she had to make things clear, in her own way. When it was time for her speech, the crowd gathered in the middle of the shop. Ama stood near the front, the warm afternoon sunlight spilling through the window behind her. She took a deep breath and began. First, I want to thank everyone who came here today. This shop is more than just a place to sell my work. It's proof that even when life knocks you down, you can stand up again. She looked around the room, letting her eyes land on the people who had been there for her. To my loyal customers who believed in my designs before anyone else, thank you. To my friends who shared my posts and encouraged me when I was tired, thank you. And to my cousin Kamau, who always had my back and never let me give up, thank you. The room erupted in applause and Ama smiled, feeling the warmth of the moment. But she knew what she hadn't said would be louder than what she did. She didn't mention her mother. Not once. Wanjika's smile faltered for just a second. She clapped along with the rest of the crowd, but her eyes told a different story. She understood. Ama wasn't going to humiliate her in public, but she also wasn't going to pretend the past hadn't happened. Ama finished her speech with a small bow of her head. This shop is built on love, resilience, and the support of those who truly want to see me win. And for that, I will always be grateful. The crowd cheered again, and people moved in to hug her, take photos, and make their first purchases. Ama felt the moment settle deep in her bones. She had said everything she needed to say, without a single cruel word. And from the way her mother's gaze lingered on her, Ama knew the message had landed exactly where it needed to. The day after the opening, the shop was quieter. Ama sat behind the counter, going through sales from the previous day, still feeling the buzz of the celebration. The flowers from friends were still fresh, and the scent of new paint lingered in the air. She heard the door creak open and looked up. Wanjika stepped inside, dressed plainly this time, without the showy makeup or jewelry. She stood near the doorway, almost hesitant. Ama, she began, her voice low. I meant what I said the other day. I want to work here. Ama put her pen down and leaned back in her chair. She studied her mother for a moment, thinking about the years of selfish choices, the betrayal, the endless need for attention. She also thought about the way Wanjiku had been looking at her during the opening, proud on the surface, but with something softer underneath. Maybe shame, maybe regret. If you work here, Ama said slowly, it won't be as a manager. It won't be sitting behind a desk giving orders. Wanjika frowned slightly. What do you mean? It means, Ama replied, you'll start as a cleaner, sweeping floors, dusting shelves, keeping the place tidy. If you want to be part of what I've built, you'll need to start from the ground up, just like I did. Her mother's lips parted in surprise. For a moment, Ama thought she might refuse. But after a long pause, Wanjika nodded, her eyes downcast. If that's what it takes, she murmured. Ama felt something shift inside her. Not victory, not revenge, but control. For so long, her mother's approval or disapproval had shaped how she felt about herself. Now she didn't need it. The decision was hers, and she was making it on her terms. All right, Ama said, standing up. You can start tomorrow morning. And Mum, this isn't a favor to you. You'll earn your place here like everyone else. Wanjika gave a small, almost uncertain smile. Understood. As she left, Ama looked around her shop. It was hers. Every necklace, every bracelet, every stitch of fabric had been built from her own work. She had rebuilt her dream without her mother's help, and now, if Wanjiku wanted to be a part of it, she would have to walk in humbly. For the first time, Ama felt truly free. Free from the weight of trying to please her mother. Free from the fear that someone could take away what she had worked for. Her life, her business, her future. It was all in her hands now. And that was worth more than any jar of savings could ever hold. Sometimes Ama thought about that day. The empty jar, the shock, the way her mother had dismissed her pain as if it were nothing. Back then, it had felt like the end of everything she had worked for. But standing in her shop now, she realized it had been the beginning of something bigger. If her mother hadn't taken the money, maybe she would have opened a small shop by the beach and stayed there, comfortable but unseen. Instead, the betrayal had forced her to think differently, to work harder, to reach further than she ever imagined. It had pushed her into the online world, into the expo in Nairobi, into the kind of success that made her name known far beyond Mombasa. She had learned that betrayal doesn't always have to break you. Sometimes it cracks you open, letting something stronger grow in its place. She no longer saw herself as the girl who lost her savings. She was the woman who built something far greater without them. Ama stood by the counter, smiling at a group of customers who had just walked in. Behind them, more people were gathering outside, peeking through the glass, eager to step in. Her shop buzzed with life, laughter, and the sound of success. Near the back, Wanjika swept the floor quietly, her head down, the broom moving in slow strokes. Every now and then, she glanced at Ama, but said nothing. Ama looked out over the busy room and felt a deep, steady pride. She thought to herself, and then said it softly under her breath, almost like a secret. She took my savings, but in return, she gave me the strength to earn millions.